And, you know, we've been talking about this for decades. Mike and I have been covering this for decades. And it seems like nothing ever changes, yet everything changes. But we've got to stop the bleeding, and that's really what we want to concentrate on first. And the other day, Mayor Cantrell was on CBS's Face the Nation, and she said that the crime rate in New Orleans was dropping. And technically, she was correct. According to the Metropolitan Crime Commission, for the first 22 days of this new year, crime is down. The problem is it's still very high. We don't want to just hit on what the administration is doing or not doing. Tyrell, I know there's some changes have been made. You know, we look at this 5% reduction in a lot of violent crime. Is it an anomaly, or is this a trend we're going to see in the new year?
Well, it's hard for us to predict the future, right? But I do think it's important to stop and recognize the actions that have been taken, right? So, you know, the mayor issued her executive order creating this task force, and what the idea or the philosophy behind that task force was bring the daily decision makers together. And the task force isn't there to make decisions for individuals or for agencies, but it's the agency heads that have the city's resources, personnel under their command to make sure the decisions that we're making individually are connected to an overall common goal.
Mm-hmm. But considering how small the police force has gotten, you know, you look at where it was, and I've got figures here, what it was before Katrina, it's like 1,700 officers on the force. We're down now to 940. That's a huge drop, and how do you, when it's that low, you know, it's tough. It's tough enough being a cop. It's really hard when you don't have backup, you don't have enough people, you're working longer hours. I mean, it's hard.
You have so many people that are not a part of the police force, and you create all of these task forces, and now you have the new violent crime reduction task force. What's supposed to happen here? You know, how is this going to effectively make any sort of curb in crime or violence that we see in the city?
Well, I think that what the task force is focused on specifically is reimagining strategies and a daily evaluation of what we did yesterday. Did it have an impact today? Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. You know, we learned of a resource degradation when it came to the removal of junk and abandoned vehicles. And so the Department of Public Works says, we know we had these cars on the street. We got 400 reports to 311 from January 1, but they had 2 working tow trucks. Okay, so the task force comes together. Who else in this room has a resource that can aid DPW in their quest to remove these vehicles that we know are contributors to crime in our neighborhoods? Together, collectively, we had a solution. Now we have 5 additional tow truck operators that are actively today removing those vehicles off the street.
All of the stakeholders who are parts of the criminal justice system and other city agencies were running these agencies, dealing with these problems. Why did it take coming together under a task force to actually get some action?
I can't speak to the why, but
I think it's just answering. We can't have peace working in pieces. And the whole purpose of us coming together is to make sure that we are aligned in our strategy. Doing environmental safety is key to public safety, doing gun safety, working with Dr. Avegno as far as getting gun locks, and then also emotional safety. How can we get mental health providers to come to the table? Just today, meeting with over 50 faith leaders, how can we get the church involved in collectively, the same way that we had to have around this table discussion around COVID. What can we do to ensure that we're not transmitting this virus? What steps can we put in, whether it's 6 feet apart, mask, sanitizer? How can we really make this a healthy situation for us to coexist? The same way we have to sit down and discuss what's working, what's not working, so we can make everybody safe. So it may have taken some time, but the fact that we are doing it, we're having this conversation right now, it's the hope that from this conversation, real action can move forward.
Has the council failed us too? I mean, what is your role in this?
I think, generally speaking, I'd say the crime spike is tracked to about 2019, 2020 is when it started. I would say historically the council absolutely failed. I think the prior council took a position of not having independent action to try and push the envelope on addressing the fact that there was a crime problem. To be clear, until the new council came in, council members wouldn't even say at council meetings, similar to the mayor, that there actually was a crime problem. The first thing this council did when we came in is we immediately, publicly, in public hearings, called in all the stakeholders and said, what in the heck is going on and how are we going to find solutions? And we immediately identified that there was a misallocation of resources, a misallocation of available departments and how they were reacting. And I mean, we went so far as, I think I started calling for Chief Ferguson's resignation in February.
I do remember that.
Right.
So, I mean, we recognized there was a dearth of leadership, and we kept asking early on, we need a plan. We need an overall plan that is going to drive the city to work together to solve this issue. And we presented a plan with the lack, because there was no plan from the administration, I want to say in March or April, and we heard crickets. We said, listen, you know what plan? Here's a plan. Let's work together to implement it. Nothing. And throughout the course of that year, the council took the necessary steps to address all those issues by passing legislation. The charter amendment that passed overwhelmingly that gave the council confirmation authority was directly tied to the fact that we could not get accountability from departments. To what Mike just said, it's kind of crazy to us that council members have been calling about burnt out lights,
Right.
junked up cars, all these things we're talking about that are now being solved with the task force. These are not new problems. I mean, Leslie can speak to it. She's got a list of 311 complaints she's filed for over a year saying, this house is a problem, this car is a problem.
Can we get this house demolished? We
Right,
know
right.
that there are drug cars outside of East School. Can we get these towed? So I think to
Why can't we?
well, there was a lack of resources. The city literally had 2 tow trucks for a city this big. And again, to say this task force, and now apparently I'm on it, as is Councilmember Thomas, to say that this task force is going to solve problems that we have been trying to get solved for a year is
Right.
really troublesome.
Well, you just mentioned something that I wanted to ask you. This task force initially in its inception did not include the city council.
Correct.
I think that there's a level of divisiveness that's happening within our city administration, within the city council, that leaves people without the faith to believe that anything can happen with the people at this table because we can't even come together to agree to be on something as simple as a task force.
Correct.
Now you're on that task force. Oliver Thomas is on that task force. What's going to happen now that we have all the people at the table?
We have not been to a meeting yet. We were just invited last Friday to the task force.
But what do you hope happens?
Hopefully, we can lend our voices to trying to find solutions to these problems. Again, to JP's point, I have lists of houses, cars, streets, outages that need to be addressed. DPW has those lists. Tom Mulligan at Safety and Permit and Code Enforcement has those lists. If I can get any movement, I don't care how it happens, it needs to happen. But it shouldn't take this task force to do it. The city should have been functioning at that level previously.
And that's frightening to hear that.
To be clear, and I want to make this on the record, we are operating in a city with a $100 million cash balance surplus. So when people say we don't have the financial resources to solve problems, that is not correct. If there was a plan on how to tackle these issues, if the city needs more tow trucks, we will give them more tow trucks, but no one told us collectively that was the problem, that we need more tow trucks. To your point, 2019 is interesting because through 2019, you had more officers onboarding to offset attrition of officers separating. 2019 is where you saw the spiral, where less officers were joining the department and more officers were leaving. That acceleration came to a head last year where over 150 officers left and we produced 22. And that's just math. I mean,
Right.
the reality is that in that acceleration and departures, we saw both from the Police and Justice Foundation and the council's own surveys, those officers are not leaving for lack of pay. We have the highest competitive pay in Louisiana, especially in southeastern Louisiana. The dissatisfaction was with morale and with management of the department, which goes back to why I was asking for the chief to leave a year ago.
Well, and let's go back to, I mean, at the height of police, the police force, we had 1,700 plus
Right.
officers, and now we're down to 940. Once you get below 1,000 like that, as I said to Tyrell, I mean, a cop's job is hard anyway. This makes it so much harder, and then even with a little more pay, what's going to say somebody, yeah, I want to come here and work for a department where I don't get backup, I don't have enough
Well,
officers?
to your point, there are, when we surveyed the officers that departed, many left for departments that paid less.
Well, I just wanted to say something quickly before we jump to Patrick, because as the head of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, you're hearing that we have a $100 million surplus, and I believe that, I don't know if the office is being properly funded or not, or how you all are working together to make sure that that's being funded. But Dr. Wyatt, I just want to ask you this question. I know that you're sitting from the outside looking in on this, and a big community advocate and someone who has worked directly with a lot of these children, and hearing these conversations happen, what's missing here? What's the missing piece?
The children. A lot of the times when we're trying to solve issues that directly impact people, we leave out the people who are directly impacted. When we talk about a task force and their community personnel on it, I'm not on it, and I don't know a person more connected to this community and its children than myself. And so I was never, it's this idea that you're trying to solve an issue that you don't really have the context to solve, and you're leaving out the people who may be able to fill in those gaps for you. That's an issue.
And unfortunately, they're a big part of the problem right now. I mean, a lot of the crime is being done by young people.
Yeah, well, and I'm always going to advocate for children in the regard that there is something that the children are seeking in the street that they're not getting in our homes, they're not getting in our schools, and they're not getting from us as community leaders. So I don't think that children just decide to get up and break into cars and rob people and murder people. I think it's a bottleneck effect. It's being disserviced on every level. It's being ignored on every level. When we talk about infrastructure, we never talk about people. You talk about roads and bridges and blight, but you never talk about people. The infrastructure that is important to this city is its people. And these are the people who are underserved, who can't find affordable housing, who can't get quality jobs. And you're expecting people to respond in an area or in a situation where it's desperation at this point. How do I feed the children?
I was going to ask you said something that was very passionate in the crime committee meeting that happened in city council that went viral on social media, and it really resonated with a lot of people. But I think sometimes that we don't address the systemic issues, the underlying issues. I think more of the things that we try to patch up are superficial, very surface level, but talking about the mothers and the families who don't make the money, have a living wage in order to feed their families properly. I think my colleague has done an interview with someone who said that while they were committing carjackings, and Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, while they were committing crimes, it was because there was a need that was inside of their home. They were seeking out other help from outside of the community, outside of their home.
I have children who are beating buckets in the French Quarter to help their mother keep the lights on. They're not out there because it's entertaining. They're out there because it's fast money, in their opinion. And so when the beating of the drums stopped working because businesses were pushing them out, calling the police, making it uncomfortable for them to be there, then where else will they go?
Right.
So Dr. Wyatt, if you had a seat at that task force table, what would you tell the panel as, say, a top priority, things that could be addressed immediately that aren't?
Invest in people. And what that looks like is, where are the jobs for families? Where are the youth initiatives? When I was in high school, there were opportunities for kids to still work after school to make ends meet. So you didn't have to be in a French Quarter beating a bucket. You can go and actually earn a living, right? I think that when you think about the broken windows theory, there is nobody that's going to take pride in where they live if where they live looks like a war zone. So they're going to act as if they're living in a war zone. If you make me feel like a villain and you villainize me, the children hear exactly the way we feel about them. I hear grown black men, grown black women saying, if they put their hand on my door handle, I'm going to kill them. So whereas you had kids just carjacking, now they're armed carjacking because they're anticipating that you are armed. The kids are listening, the kids are watching, and you hear me all the time say love, and people think that it's just lip service. But anybody that feels valued acts appropriately. right?
There's a lack of accountability from all the departments to the people that pay their salaries on every single level. Now, I'm not talking about the individual people. Well, sometimes I am, people who are not doing their jobs, but there needs to be every day a willingness to walk into City Hall and say, today we're going to solve some problems. And to Councilman Harris's point, part of the frustration we had during that meeting about the task force and suddenly the lights are getting fixed, and it's like, what changed from the call that she made in February of last year on a light or a car, and now, if it was this simple to solve the problem, why didn't we do it then? I will tell you that, to also Dr. Wyde's point, my greatest frustration as to why this is a reoccurring problem, it's actually very simple. Every time we have these massive crime spikes, business leaders come together, then it was Friends of Nord, now it's the New Orleans Coalition, and they go, here's all these resources to solve this problem. The moment the problem is deemed as fixed, all the resources go away. The city disinvests in all the programs that actually affect and help kids, all the programs that work on a community level, and we get surprised that when we continue to fund law enforcement. I'll give you something that really blew our collective mind.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm interrupting. That goes back to Dr. Wyatt's.
No, she's 100% right.
She's exactly right, but it's a systemic problem we talk about, we just don't solve.
But I'll give you an example. When we got the budget, we saw in the original budget proposed to us that they were increasing the funding for NOPD to address crime issues, and they were cutting the budget of NORD. And for anyone who works in the community, when you are funding 1/2 of the solution and ignoring the other half, you cannot be surprised when nothing actually gets fixed.
With no result.
And the thing is that the few times in the history of our city where resources were allocated appropriately to try and address all the employment opportunities, to address education, to address recreation, tutoring, we saw directly crime and inequity went down.
I know that, Patrick, with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, have you guys met with the City Council and with the City Council President so that you all can discuss kind of the steps moving forward? Are you guys working on something that's within the realm of possibility?
I mean, I'll say that I met with Ms. Harris. We've talked. Really, honestly, I feel like we can. I'm not here to point fingers. If there is a blame, I'll take accountability for blame because I'm not here to promote myself per se, but we have a real problem. I support the NOPD, the people in the city who get up every day, who want to work, who have to support their families. I believe that the City Council is doing what they need to do, but we have to have these conversations for us to find some type of solution for today. If me going back and explaining what our office is or what it's tried to do over the years, I'm still just rehashing what might have worked, would have worked, but at the end of the day, has it solved for today, for tonight, if there's a shooting today? I want to work with the council, I want to work with the president to get his ideas to implement what we are trying to see, not only locally, but how we apply with some of the national standards. The Biden administration released a 5-point plan around there are certain things that you should have.
Right. So what are some of those problems? What are some of the things you would like to say? Obviously, an opportunity here.
Just ideally, how we can expand our community crisis response team. So it moved from ceasefire to cure violence to community crisis response team. We respond not only to hospital shootings, but also to murder scenes. And then also, how do we follow up with those families? The initial conception only focused on a 6-block radius in the Central City area. But now, if you look at what other cities do, they have multiple agencies in multiple parts of the city. We should have a cure violence model in every district. It shouldn't just be focused on Central City. As we expand it and we find from the data, what are the hotspot areas, whether it's Algiers, whether it's New Orleans East, whether it's Central downtown in Summerwood.
I think what we have found as a council, and we've gone over and over again with nonprofits and other organizations that work outside of government, is that there are more effective entities that work outside of government, like a YEP, for example, which is one of my favorite organizations, that can actually do the work.
Yeah.
And so let's fund those organizations that show proven results rather than come up with some new idea that is unproven.
I really want there to be a conversation about how hard it is to pay your rent and to put food on your table. So why can't we as a city cap the way that these landlords are pushing people out of their homes by continuing to skyrocket rent, which is making it hard for people to live comfortably. And so I don't know about you, but if you disservice me in a way and you force me into a corner of desperation, I don't know how I would react, right? And so we have children out here trying to make adult-like decisions to help their parent keep the lights on.
I want to go back to Mike's question. I think the biggest frustration, we had a very contentious meeting last week about crime. And it was a good meeting because I think Dr. White would agree, everyone had the opportunity in a public forum to express how they were feeling and what their ideas were. I will tell you that the skepticism I've found about everything in the administration, whether it be the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, whether it be the task force, whatever else, is that it's not accountable to the public. You have to get public buy-in. The one thing I will tell you that I voiced over and over again from last year, and we pleaded with Chief Ferguson to do it, is the Pennington plan was a public plan. He unveiled it to the public and said, this is what I'm going to do. And further, as many people who lived during that time period, I was in high school, knew, he said, if I don't reduce crime within 3 years, fire me.
And he did reduce it.
He did, but my point is this. We don't have accountability metrics, and they're absolutely necessary as to whether departments work and whether programs work.
The public, and whether you agree with the recall movement or not, it's showing the public is getting involved. And when the public yells at politicians, you all listen.
Well, that's because a lot of people are uncomfortable. If we had this discomfort in silos and in communities that were extremely impoverished, but now the crime is so bad that it's reaching affluent neighborhoods, and now the cries are louder, right? And people are collectively angry.
And to your point, Eric, the position of government is to be accountable to the people that govern it.
Yes.
While we will continue to have contentious meetings on crime and similar issues, it's important to have those conversations in public so we can be held accountable for what we do. On the flip side, whenever you have task force or other groups that say, I'm going to solve your problem, trust me, and then you look over years and the problem ain't solved, that's why you see such tremendous skepticism when someone says, I've got a new idea. The reality is that, and Leslie is absolutely the data nerd, but like, if you cannot produce data showing what you're doing is working, we as a council should not be funding it.
And to that point, it's not an either or. It's not the task force to say, oh, we're going to solve the whole city's problem. It's not saying that what you produce wasn't effective, or what Dr. Wyatt is saying isn't ineffective. It's all of these. We need all of the strategies. It's not just one thing that's going to be like the smoking gun.
We don't need to throw good money after bad.
And you're all right, because maybe we're stopping the bleeding now with this latest crime report. The bleeding has to stop first. The systemic problem we all have to work on. We have to have good education, affordable housing, and jobs. And a lot of times we don't have that in New Orleans.
And how is it that we're sitting on a surplus and we can't make that happen?
You're right. The administration and the council, how we've chosen to interact between each other. And I'm not a member of the administration technically, right? I'm an independent agency that reports to a board, not the mayor. And I think that's why she may have tapped me, because I do have that ability to move differently than any other people. And I have enjoyed a phenomenal working relationship on the 9-1 and 3-1 side with every member of council. And I think this is an opportunity for us to come together, move through the divisiveness, and focus on solutions. But it's important to talk about tow trucks, right? And how if we knew this was a problem, then we would have done something about it. The administration came to the council in the budget for a vehicle replacement plan. The new tow trucks are on order. They're not physically going to be here till next year. So the task force said, okay, now we got to be creative. We have to find a new, innovative way to meet this need. And so that's what has happened. And we keep talking about the Pennington plan. And it had phenomenal results. But the conditions on the ground are very different than they were at that time. And I think we have to stop saying what worked then will work again. We have, you mentioned the 940 police officers. That was not the reality when Pennington was chief.
There were 1,400 when he came.
Exactly. So we're less than 500 or more than 500 reduced. And so that plan that he had may not work today because the resource is no longer available. So I think we have to all commit to come to the table and say, hey, I have an idea. Explore it. And we say, oh, that's not going to work.
You've been critical of the Pennington plan.
I was critical because of some of the effects of it. The rise in incarceration, the unjustified arrests. We led the nation also in overturned cases after the Pennington plan. And it's not that, again, we can't just police our way into it. We just can't lock our way and just, I mean, we increased our prison population after that plan. Like, look at the rise from incarceration from 1995 to 2017. We led the world in incarceration. And so there's some direct aspects of it that we have to examine too. But again, this is today, 2023, and what we're focused on, again, addressing the new plan. The City Council did acknowledge with Dr. Vegno a public health approach to gun violence. That is a step to say that this is a public health approach, this is a crisis, this is a disease that we have to get in front of. Bringing Dr. Wyatt into the conversation is a great idea. I support that as well. But at the end of the day, we're having this conversation because we need to do something that we can act on now.
But I also believe that the idea of the police aspect is on the back end. If we invest in people on the front end, like if you give people
You've
the
gotta do both,
opportunity
'cause you
to
can work
thrive,
and chew gum at the same time.
yes, but you can't police and then neglect the people.
Exactly.
If you invest in people on the front end, there should be a litany of jobs available to families. There should be a litany of affordable housing available to families. There are more Airbnbs and short-term rentals than there are a place for people to sustain with their family and their 3 children.
Yeah, we live in a
so
city where it's like median income's $45,000.
if we do those things, we could directly impact, you know, the crime or the violence or the need for over-policing. We could impact those things. People want to live comfortably, people want to eat, and people want to be able to take care of their families. And we have to incorporate the education system.
Well, that's when we talk about the systemic
Absolutely.
issues. Though.
Absolutely.
If you don't take care of the root cause of the problem, then I think the problem will continue.
The city gonna
And I wish
continue
we had
burning.
more time to do this.
Yeah.
This has been a good first discussion. I think it's been very enlightening in many ways, and I hope the audience gets something out of this. And you know, we spark conversation that will bring change. You know, one of the points that I thought was really well done is we cannot fund the police and drop the social programs, NORD and things like that. There's got to be a balance.
But that goes back to JP's point about having a plan.
Yep.
Like you have to have something that the public can hold you accountable to. And if you're afraid to have a plan, then you do not need to be in leadership.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us today. I think it was very fruitful.
Yeah, it was certainly really fruitful. Thank you all.
Yeah.